G'day mates! First off, a shout out to another Dave that lives around the corner in ST17 who commented in my last video. This video isn't about Stafford, but hopefully you'll find it interesting anyway. One of the videos I want to make is about having some magic glasses that will show you whatever you ask to see. Such as, where are my car keys? And, stupidly, show me all the spiders in my house. So I've been thinking about how to do this effect. What would it look like when you ask magic glasses to show you where your car keys are? It needs to be some kind of fancy screen overlay. Now, my favourite computer game is called Horizon Zero Dawn, and in that the main character's got a little device called a focus. Put in your head there. This device gives the wearer extra information about the world around them in a really high-tech way. And it not only highlights things, but it's got this really recognisable kind of crystal dome-esque ball shape, which I think is called an icosahedron, that always stays centered around the user. So I thought, I want to give that a go. How hard can it be? So I started by just taking some test base footage, just turning slightly and going backwards and forwards a bit to give it some depth. I modelled the crystal maze ball, which from now on I'll refer to as the dome, in free 3D program Blender. Now my first thought was to take this, slap it onto my footage and change its position as I move. However, problem, hold up. In the game, the dome just doesn't sit as a layer over the top of everything. It interacts and intersects with objects as if it's really there in the 3D world. So I could go through frame by frame and delete the parts that are intersecting with like the desk and the chair, but that's just not scalable. It takes so long to do. I want the computer to figure out when the dome's going through an object and hide the parts of the dome that you shouldn't be able to see, because there's a desk in the way, for instance. Now, our human brains are amazing at working out a 3D scene. We know that when we move, things moving faster tend to be in the foreground and slower things are in the background. This is called parallax. We instinctively build 3D models of our world in our heads. It's how we know how far to reach out our hand to pick up a mug. Or we can visualise where the corners of a car are to get it into a parking space. So how on earth do we get a computer to understand a clip of video and make a 3D map of it? What do? I'll tell you what we do. We put the footage back into Blender and say, hey, look at this video and look at all the things that are moving in relation to each other. Then we let it absolutely thrash my computer for a while and bingo, it figures out what's what in the video in 3D space purely through doing some nuts hard maths. All of these points on the screen represent points in real life that it was able to track from the video, and it's showing us how the camera moves in relation to everything. The computer has figured out the layout of my room in 3D from 2D footage. This is science fiction level stuff I've just done in a few minutes on free software in my room. What a time to be alive! So because in the game, the dome stays centered on the user, we'll gaffer tape it to the camera, so whenever the camera moves, the dome moves too. Now we can start blocking out the items that I want the dome to interact with. Deskitron, sofa boy, chair friend. Now we can see that the dome intersects these items as the camera moves towards them. These items don't need to be detailed, they're basically a mask that will just hide the dome. To do this, we set them to something called holdout mode, which just means make the object and anything that goes behind it transparent. Bingo bongo, sexy thongo. We'll save this as an animation, go into Adobe After Effects and put it over the top of my footage. Looking good! The dome's cutting off where it goes through our invisible 3D models that were in the same place as their real life counterparts. The focus has this little hood or heads-up display in the centre of the screen that doesn't move and reacts whenever it goes over the top of a point of interest. Because in this footage the centre of the screen goes over my chair a couple of times, I'll make that the point of interest. Back in Blender, I'll render out just the chair but in a solid colour and put this over the top of our footage too. I've played around with a few filters to get something half resembling how the focus in the game highlights things. I'll use a radial wipe to reveal the green circle when it goes over our chair, and finally, add the sound clips from the game. There we have it, my quick and dirty little Horizon Zero Dawn overlay. So with a bit more work I could probably get it looking a bit better. But to be honest, because players of the game know exactly what it should look like, I mean they've spent tens of hours with this thing on the screen in front of them, it's one of those things where if you can tell it's not perfect, you know there's something off about it. So although I've kind of achieved what I set out to do, I think for my own video I'm going to come up with my own little user interface display to highlight the things that I want to show. So if you want to see how that turns out, stay tuned! I've been trying to think of other ways to say subscribe. Subscribe?